Jasmine needs a studio for her candle brand, not a roommate. My mother didn't even stand up to say it. She just sat there, swirling her imported rosé, while I stood in the doorway holding 2 first-class train tickets I'd bought for them. "She's actually building something with her life," Marcus went on, his voice flat. "You're 30, Delaney. You're dead weight. Get your trash out of my hallway. Go live under a bridge for all I care. Maybe the cold will freeze that smug expression off your face." I looked past him. My childhood bedroom wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was gutted. The walls oozed with fresh seafoam green paint. My bookcase replaced by softbox lights. My entire existence was jammed into 3 black trash bags slumped in a corner like wet laundry. I didn't yell. I didn't sob. I placed the envelope with the train tickets gently on the hall table, a quiet symbol of the trip they'd just lost. Then I grabbed my garbage bags and walked straight back out into the wind-screaming night without a word. I drove my dented Corolla down the icy Ohio backroads until I spotted a flickering vacancy sign outside a roadside motel near Mansfield. The heater in the car coughed like a dying animal, pushing out lukewarm air across my numb hands. Fitting, really. They hated this car, said it embarrassed the neighborhood. They didn't know I kept it on purpose. It was armor. As I sat on the lumpy motel bed, listening to winter claw at the windows, my mind drifted back to the origin of all of it, the so-called original sin. Marcus called it the $4.7 million mistake. It happened in 2000. I was 5 years old. He had a meeting set up with venture capitalists looking to back a new cybersecurity startup before IPO. But that morning, I woke up convulsing with a 105-degree fever. I had to be rushed to the ER. Marcus missed the meeting. That startup exploded. Everyone who showed up walked away millionaires. Marcus did not, and he never let me forget it. Every birthday, right after the candles went out, he'd look across the table at me like he was staring into an open grave and say, "You cost me almost $5 million, Delaney. You're starting life in the red." He didn't raise a daughter. He carried a sunk cost. That resentment hardened into what I always called the parasite tax. Since I was 17, I paid rent to stay in my own home. Every paycheck from tutoring, pet sitting, side gigs, sliced. He called it interest on the debt. But it didn't stop there. I wasn't just paying to exist, I was financing the prized daughter. Jasmine was the product. I was the burden. When Jasmine wanted to become an herbalist, I paid for her class kits. When she pivoted to holistic beauty, my mother told me I had to chip in for her LED facials and micro-influencer coaching. They drained me. Told me I should be grateful they hadn't kicked me out years ago. They looked at my frizzy bun, my flannel layers, my tired eyes, and saw failure. They saw someone patching together rent money with back-end coding contracts and bug fixes. They were wrong. I pulled my laptop out of the bag and dropped it on the motel desk. The case was scratched, but the build was custom: encrypted RAM, military-grade VPN, and quantum tracing software. They thought I fixed routers. They didn't know I was the digital cleanup crew for collapsing hedge funds. When investment firms suspect internal fraud, they bring me in. I unravel the money. I trace stolen cash, locate hidden equity, and surgically remove rot. I'm not just good, I'm expensive. Last year, I cleared $720,000 before bonuses. I could have paid off their mortgage and rebuilt that house in gold paneling, but I didn't. I spread my wealth across blind trusts and layered accounts. I wore clearance rack clothes and drove a rust bucket for a reason. If they knew what I was worth, they wouldn't just bleed me, they'd dissect me. I sat in the motel dark, the screen's blue glow flickering across my face. They thought they threw away dead weight. They didn't know they'd just gone to war with a woman who bankrupts CEOs for a living. I needed to work. It was the only thing that still made sense. I reached for the laptop. My hand met nothing. The bag was too light. My stomach dropped through the floor. I dumped it out on the polyester duvet. Chargers, cables, backup drive, but no laptop. My machine, the machine that held data worth millions, was gone. I didn't scream. I opened my phone and launched my device tracker. The signal pinged. Not at the house. 2.8 miles away. A blinking dot on Westfield Avenue. Cash King Pawn. I drove there in a blur, snow turning to gray slush under my tires. The pawn shop smelled like dust and dead luck. I gave the man my ID and read off the device serial. He didn't even glance up. No ticket, no return, or file a police report. Wait 3 weeks. My breath caught. I ran back to the Corolla, threw open the trunk, ripped through the garbage bags right there in the parking lot, clothes flying in the cold wind. I found it, a crumpled yellow slip soaked in old coffee and shoved inside a hoodie sleeve. They hadn't just kicked me out, they looted me. I marched back inside, flattened the receipt on the counter, and paid $800 to reclaim my own property. I sat in my front seat, clutching the cold laptop like a lifeline. And that's when the second alert hit. An email from the Ohio BMV. Notice of title transfer. My Corolla, bought with cash 5 years ago, but still in Marcus's name to get cheaper premiums, had been sold. Timestamp? 20 minutes before I arrived at the house. He sold my car while I was driving it to them. Probably handed it over with the spare key while I stood inside being evicted. $31,000 in assets. Gone. I called my mother. She answered like I was interrupting a massage. You stole my laptop, Delaney, and my car. We didn't steal, we raised you. That laptop, that's a drop in the ocean compared to what you owe us. And Jasmine's launch event needed a deposit. You'll manage, you're single, fewer expenses. She hung up. The heater hissed, the snow kept falling, and something inside me finally locked into place. It wasn't a break, it was a system reboot. I wiped the last tear I would ever waste on them off my face. I opened my laptop. The glow of the screen flickered on, waiting for a password. I stopped being Delaney, the daughter who begged to be seen. I became Delaney, the fixer, the auditor, the woman you call when your books are bleeding and you need to know where the bodies are buried. I didn't need tears. I needed numbers. I didn't sleep. Sleep is a luxury for people who aren't under attack, and I was on a deadline. The motel room had gone glacial. The heater finally died with a groan, but the cold made me sharper. I sat at the desk while my laptop hummed, the sound of a scalpel warming up in a quiet operating room. I launched my enterprise suite, not public tools, but internal software used by elite firms tracking failing assets and unstable debt holders. I started with the easy mark, the money from the car. I followed the chain. Marcus had listed my Corolla on a rapid sale platform for cash buyers. The transaction closed at 4:13 p.m. $8,000. A complete steal. Not a dollar went to bills. Not the mortgage, not utilities. It went straight to Velvet Rose Events, a luxury event service. $8,000 for artisanal hors d'oeuvres and a champagne wall at Jasmine's product launch. I felt a chemical bitterness rise in my mouth. They weren't just robbing me, they were carving me up to feed her ego. I went deeper. I ran a full asset profile on Marcus and my mother. I expected chaos. What I found was a corpse. Their finances were beyond collapsed. They were in rigor mortis. The house had been refinanced 4 times in 6 years, 4 maxed credit lines, and worst of all, a default notice filed just 30 days prior. They weren't just strapped, they were a month away from foreclosure. The house, the one they booted me from to make room for Jasmine's candles, wasn't even theirs anymore. It belonged to a bank. But I didn't want a sad ending. I wanted leverage. I needed a felony. I opened the most recent refinance paperwork, the application still pending approval. I couldn't hack the bank. That's movie nonsense. But I didn't need to. I knew Marcus. I knew his vanity. I called Davis Shore, a corporate attorney who owed me a clean ledger from last year. I need a shell, I said. Name it Hamilton Row Capital. Make it look like a boutique fund dealing in high-risk personal portfolios. Then, I need you to call Marcus. This was a bait job. In my world, we call it planting the fruit. You don't chase a starving dog. You feed it. Let it believe it's found salvation. Davis made the call an hour later. He said Hamilton Rowe represented a silent investor interested in backing visionary families and was exploring a debt acquisition strategy that could preserve Jasmine's momentum. I monitored the inbox via an old family domain Marcus never removed me from. I watched the hook land. Marcus didn't nibble, he chomped. He replied in 6 minutes, bragging about how Jasmine's brand was primed to explode. Davis sent the follow-up. Please send your latest refinance application so we can match asset disclosures. Simple. If Marcus was clean, he'd pause. But he wasn't. He believed his own mythology. The file landed in my inbox. I scrolled past the house valuation, past the conveniently omitted liabilities. Then I saw it. Income line. Applicant, Marcus Lowell. Annual income, $91,000. Co-applicant, Jasmine Lowell. Income, $180,000. Source, organic skincare brand deals. I stared at the number. Jasmine didn't make $180,000. Jasmine didn't make $18. She had an Instagram account full of fake followers and a garage full of candles no one ordered. Marcus had lied to a federally backed lender. That's not exaggeration. That's federal bank fraud. Title 18, Section 1344. Penalty? Up to 30 years and $1 million fine. I backed up the file to encrypted drives and cloud vaults. Marcus thought he was emailing a ticket to salvation. He'd just emailed the guillotine. I shut the laptop. Dawn was melting into the gray motel parking lot. I wasn't just the daughter anymore. I was the collector. The trap was wired. I just needed them to walk into it. The next morning, Davis called Marcus to schedule the meeting, told him the silent partner, a reclusive West Coast investor known only as Mr. H, was in Ohio for 1 day and insisted on an in-person close. He specifically requested Jasmine attend, saying he was intrigued by her holistic aesthetic. They fell for it like toddlers chasing candy. I showed up at the law firm an hour early, took the private elevator to the top floor. Davis met me outside the boardroom. He didn't ask questions. He knew what bank fraud looked like, and he knew what I did to people who committed it. He handed me a key card to the observation suite. I sat in the shadows watching the conference feed. Marcus walked in first, in a suit that didn't quite fit. My mother trailed in beside him, pearls probably paid for with my insurance refund. Jasmine wandered in last, oversized sunglasses and blank expression, glued to her phone. They sat like royalty. Davis poured champagne, complimentary, of course, but Marcus pretended it was on his tab. Only the good stuff, he said, swirling his glass like he owned the building. The Lowell family doesn't settle for average. So, my mother said, eager, fake casual, when does the transfer go through? As soon as the signatures are finalized, Davis said smoothly. The silent partner believes in the long-term vision, especially Jasmine. Jasmine lit up. Did he see my reel? It hit 5,000 views. He saw everything, Davis replied, which is why he requires a personal guarantee. He wants to ensure full commitment. Marcus laughed, already high on praise. Committed? I've given everything to this family. This house is just the beginning. He signed. My mother signed. Jasmine signed as witness. They thought they signed alone. What they actually signed was a snare. Buried deep in the stack was a cross-default clause, page 39, section C4, stating that if any statement in the application proved materially false, the agreement would default instantly. And on page 47 sat the real trigger, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, pre-signed and held in escrow. The moment default activated, the title would transfer automatically to the lender, Hamilton Rowe Capital. No courtroom, no judge, just ink and consequence. A steel trap disguised as opportunity. They signed my house over to me while sipping my champagne.
In the observation room, I stood and adjusted my blazer. The woman in the reflection wasn't the girl who cried in the snow outside a pawn shop. She was ownership. I walked down the hallway toward the boardroom. Time to close. Davis stacked the paperwork with the neat precision of a coroner sealing a file. "Excellent," he said. "Funds will be released shortly, but first, the silent partner would like a word." Marcus leaned back, smug. "Send him in. I'd love to thank a man who recognizes vision." Davis didn't open the doors. He stepped aside. I pushed them open myself. No flannel, no clearance rack denim. I walked in wearing a charcoal suit, cut like a verdict, hair pulled tight, expression clean, presence sharp enough to slice air. Marcus's grin stalled mid-performance. My mother squinted like reality needed better lighting. Jasmine didn't look up until the silence thickened. "Delaney," Marcus finally croaked. "How did you get in here?" He snapped at Davis. "This is my daughter. She's unstable. She's here for money." Davis shut his briefcase with a snap that echoed like a starter pistol. "Security won't be necessary," I said evenly, the kind of calm you use when someone's hiding offshore accounts and pretending they're untouchable. I walked to the head of the table. Marcus remained seated, but I stood over him. Then I reached into my pocket and placed a small, wrinkled yellow slip onto the polished wood. My mother's voice trembled. "What is that?" "My pawn receipt," I said. "For my laptop. You sold it for $800. I bought it back this morning." I paused. "And then I bought something else." Marcus shot to his feet. "Enough. You're humiliating yourself. Sit down." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Authority doesn't shout. It invoices. He slowly lowered himself back into his chair. "Davis," I said without breaking eye contact, "show them the acquisition." The lights dimmed. The projector came alive. The wall lit up with a property deed. Address, 881 Hawthorne Ridge, Mansfield, Ohio. Previous owners, Marcus and Elena Lowell. Current owner, Hamilton Row Capital, LLC. Marcus stared as if the letters might rearrange into something less fatal. "That's collateral paperwork," he muttered. "It's standard." "Correction," I replied. "It's a title transfer." He turned on Davis. "You said this was a loan." Davis's face didn't shift. "My client executed a distressed asset acquisition. Documentation is legally binding. You signed the deed in lieu voluntarily." He walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing the room in vacuum silence. Marcus pointed at me with a trembling finger. "You set this up. You created that company." "I am Hamilton Row Capital," I said calmly, "and you just signed your house over to me." My mother's composure fractured. "That's illegal. We signed a 30-year loan." I tapped the remote. The projection shifted to the refinance application Marcus had emailed, enlarged and merciless. I pointed to the income line. Co-applicant, Jasmine Lowell. Annual income, $180,000. I looked at him. Jasmine doesn't make $180,000. She makes nothing. The only sound in the room was the hum of the projector fan. You submitted falsified income to secure funding from a federally insured lender. That's bank fraud, Clause C4. Any materially false statement triggers immediate default. Section D1, upon default, the deed in lieu held in escrow transfers title to the lender immediately. I leaned forward, palms flat on the table. You lied. That means the contract defaulted the second you signed it. And because it defaulted, the house belongs to me right now. Marcus's face drained to ash. He looked at the wall, at me, at Jasmine, who finally lowered her phone. "You wouldn't. We're your family." "Family?" I repeated softly, like testing counterfeit currency. Family doesn't throw you out in a blizzard. Family doesn't sell your livelihood to fund a launch party. I checked my watch. You have 48 hours to vacate my property. If you're not out, or if a single fixture is damaged, I forward the fraud documentation to federal authorities. I slid the pawn receipt back into my pocket. 30 years, Marcus, or you leave quietly. Your choice. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Just a man realizing too late that he wasn't arguing with a daughter. He was negotiating with consequence. They left. Fear outperformed loyalty. 48 hours later, the house was empty. I hired movers for what they abandoned, but I handled the final math myself. I deducted the value of my stolen car, the $800 to recover my laptop, every rent payment extracted from me since I was 17. The relocation check I cut them was modest, barely enough for a cramped rental on the outskirts of town. Word spread. Marcus ended up working the register at a hardware store. Elena stared at beige apartment walls she despised. And Jasmine, the influencer with imaginary six figures, started reselling handbags online to cover groceries. Turns out rent isn't payable in likes. Before listing the house, I walked through it once more. It felt smaller now, hollow. I paused at my old bedroom door, still painted that aggressive seafoam green, the scent faint but stubborn. I left it untouched, a fluorescent monument to greed. Then I stepped outside, locked the deadbolt, and listened to the click. Clean, final, mine. At my car, my new car, titled in my name, I pulled out my phone, scrolled to their contacts. Marcus, Elena, Jasmine. No farewell speech, no dramatic exit. Just block, one by one. The silence afterwards was absolute. Expensive, but worth every cent. Family isn't blood, it's respect. And if they can't afford that, they can't afford you. Most people scroll past stories like this. The ones who subscribe are the ones trying to change something inside themselves. If this made you stop scrolling, subscribe to get more stories like this every day and share it with someone who needs to remember what they're really worth.